Hi, my name is Isabel Blanchett, and this is my older adult oral video presentation. So for my presentation, I interviewed my 86-year-old grandmother, who is fantastic in every sense of the word. And so while I was doing my presentation with my grandmother, I had tried to get her to explain her life in each of Erikson's stages of development. And while I tried to get her to focus on each one, she kept reverting back to a single one, which ended up being the main focus of this presentation because of that. And so the stage that she focused on the most was Erikson's 8th stage, integrity versus despair. And so for this stage, Erikson believed that at the age of 65 and older, adults sit down and they reflect back on their life. And essentially, the adult is either satisfied with how their life has gone or unsatisfied with how it's gone. And so the individuals who are satisfied with their life have like this sense of serenity and calmness over them, where they can look back and state that they're happy with the life choices they made, they were able to accomplish that which they have accomplished. And while they might have a few regrets, it doesn't take away from the sense of satisfaction of what they've done. Where on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who might be unsatisfied with how their life has gone, where they live with a sense of regret because of all the opportunities they missed and opportunities they wish they had taken in the moment, but either didn't or backed out of, or they just weren't taken at all. So Joan was very focused on this integrity versus despair stage. So we might be talking about adolescence and like her choices then, and much of what she said would be like, oh, like I did this, but if I knew what I did then, what I know now, then I wouldn't have done this, or I wish I had done this in the moment instead of this. And it just ended up being a lot of regret and talking about missed opportunities that she wished she had taken but couldn't. And so one main part is that she regretted how she lived her life, specifically living her life task to task. So she had mentioned how when she viewed life as a younger individual set as tasks, like you needed to finish school, go meet a guy, settle down with the guy, get married, have kids, grow old, and do like the task bar such as that. And so she had mentioned how much of her life was sitting there, finishing a task and moving on to the next one, where she wasn't able to appreciate the life that she had, and spent so much time just sitting there trying to show off what she can do that she didn't appreciate and wasn't able to bask in the opportunity she was given. She had additionally mentioned needing to conform to social expectations and not being able to accomplish much of what she wanted. So main focus that she loved to talk about was that she did everything she was expected to do as a woman. And so she had mentioned how a woman back in her day was expected to settle down, meet a guy, and have kids. And that was the main focus of what a woman had to do. But because that was the main focus, she wasn't able to do other things she might have wanted, such as getting a degree, being able to do like this high-risk job or whatever. She had mentioned how she wanted to do more with her life and be able to enjoy it rather than let it pass her by. She had mentioned how within the blink of an eye it seemed like she was a young woman trying to sit there and decide what she wanted to do with her life. To 2 seconds later, she is now reevaluating everything she's done and feeling that she may not be as satisfied as she wanted to be. So Joan had a lot of accomplishments throughout her life. So she was able to create the family that she wanted. She was able to settle down with a guy, have a son, and it was great. Eventually, at the age of 40, she learned how to drive and was able to gain that sense of independence. And once her son was old enough to take care of himself, she was able to get a part-time job and was able to continue to live on her own without much assistance. So she had mentioned how much of her friends were getting to the point of being immobile, where they couldn't walk around much or needed the assistance, or even needed so much assistance that they were put in living facilities, where they would live there full-time, have nurses come in and they just lost their sense of independence. So she was thrilled by the idea that she's still able to sit there and get around. And while she might need some assistance for something, she was essentially very independent in that area. Some of her challenges was Joan was not given the opportunity to go to college or get a job, or at least a job she wanted. So she had stated that she wanted to go out and do more with her life, and how she sees many people these days going out, going to college, getting degrees, and being able to do these high-profile jobs, like being a doctor, being a lawyer, and how she would have loved to do something like that, but just wasn't given the opportunity to. She mentioned how her family had pressured her into a marriage, had told her that she was taking too long and needed to focus on getting a male and creating a family. And then another downfall was that she could only have one child. So while the pressure was to have multiple kids, to have a large family, she was only able to have one, which decreased her life satisfactory. And then, as stated previously, she felt that she was living her entire life task to task and wasn't able to appreciate the experiences she had until they were no longer available. And so she had mentioned how recently, with the passing of her husband, she had realized that they missed so many opportunities because they just kept saying, like, oh, we'll do it later, or maybe another day, just not today. And that because she kept putting it off, it led to them missing out on so many opportunities too, and that after he had died, she realized just how unsatisfied, their life was together because they weren't able to do all these things they wanted to do. So the psychosocial crisis resolution. The crisis in this stage would be the satisfaction of someone's life. So if a person is completely satisfied with how they've lived their life, their goal is to sit there and try to maintain that satisfaction. Where a person who is unsatisfied with their life should be able to sit there and go back and learn from their experiences and try to regain control and satisfaction of their life. So when it came to Joan, she was unsatisfied with how her life had gone, and stated that while her life isn't over yet, she was currently trying to make the attempt to make it better, and to take the opportunity she was given rather than holding them off or letting them go altogether. When asked what factors might play a role in her leading to an unsatisfied life, much of what she focused on was the time period in social expectation. So, as stated, she felt that she was pressured into the role of being the caregiver and home taker of the family. And so, this time period she was growing up in led her to be forced to take on the role of a woman, as the role was to sit there and get married and have kids and stay home, take care of your kids, have a hot meal on the table by the time your husband gets home kind of deal. Another contributing factor would be her age, but this is more recently. So she stated that her age has prevented her from getting around because she has lost her license and hasn't been able to drive for some time. She isn't able to get around as much and be as social as she wants to be. And so one of the articles I read about discusses how as an individual ages, their social bubble grows from bigger to smaller and smaller, and just keeps getting smaller until there's no one left. And much of it is because people aren't able to get around, they're not as social as they once were, and so she had mentioned how previously she would be able to go to the market, and would have friends at the market, small shops, might go play bingo with friends, but because of their age and being able to not get around as much as they want, their interactions grew smaller and smaller and smaller. So now it's maybe a phone call every once in a while. Other areas were education, where because she was only halfway through high school when she dropped out, she isn't able to sit there and go for the jobs that require a GED, high school diploma, or even a college diploma. So she was forced into part-time jobs that she might not really want or enjoy. And then social class also played a role because she stated that while growing up and even while having her own family, they weren't able to sit there and spend the money that they wanted to do the activities, such as going to an amusement park, because it was choosing between an amusement park or choosing to eat for the week. There were additional factors that aided the crisis, such as having the family, because it took up so much of her time. She stated that that was essentially over 18 years where she was forced into the role of caring for the family and not being able to take control of her life. Old age also played a role because now she is unable to really leave her house unless she has the assistance of someone who can drive, and her social bubble is just contracting. She had mentioned how the inability to forgive also played a role because that decreased the amount of people in her life. She said that she struggles with the idea of forgiving individuals and have let people go because of her inability to forgive mistakes they may have made. And so one of the other articles I read was discussing how older adults who tend to struggle with forgiveness also have a higher likelihood of depressive symptoms, which ultimately leads to the unsatisfaction of their life. So that was a really interesting article to read and be able to apply to a person who was able to admit that they struggle in that field. Another is the lack of participation in shaping the outcome of someone's life. And so one of the articles I read discussed how you have 4 types of experiences, and within those experiences you have a sense of coherence. And so part of that is that those 4 areas essentially outline how happy someone can be in their life. And one of them is participation in shaping the outcome of their life. So the fact that she had so many social factors and other people sitting there trying to control her life, she wasn't able to be as active a participant in her life that she wanted to, which essentially led to her being partially unsatisfied. Some factors that helped overcome the crisis was the loss of a spouse. So while it was a terrible thing to have happen, it gave her a revelation that she should stop missing opportunities and take opportunities that presented itself, stop putting them off, and be able to sit there and try to make a change, be satisfied with how she's living her life. While how she has lived in the past might be, she may feel unsatisfied, that she can move forward and try to reshape it. Another is family support. So she had stated that she's happy that her family was able to support her, and that now she has grandkids who can come over, and seeing her grandkids, it sits there and boosts her mood. Her grandkids are able to take her out, so she had mentioned how last week she got to go to an amusement park and was able to sit there and go on all the rides, went on some roller coasters, these crazy rides that she never would have thought because she would have been too scared or didn't want to take the opportunity. But her grandkids were able to get out there. She said even if it was going outside and taking a chair and sitting on her front lawn, that was something she could do to sit there and expand her social circle, talk to people, and just be able to get a more satisfactory look at her life.